Hey up, it's the Bingley wheeler, trusting this finds you well again. And today I just thought we'd take a look at this, one of my other motorcycles, a classic Yamaha XJR1300. Now this is a 2008 registered bike with just 9,000 miles on the clock. When I bought this a couple of years ago, although it was in excellent condition, in fact close to mint condition, it didn't have much by way of additions or embellishments, and a lot of the things I've added to this, some are functional, some are purely cosmetic, and some are a bit of both. So I just thought that since in the previous video I'd gone through the things that I've managed to do with the KTM 1290 Super Adventure, that we'd look at a completely different bike, and I could just show you what's available and what can be added to improve the overall performance and functionality of the machine. Now this motorcycle is a 1300cc inline 4-cylinder engine, air and oil cooled, and it's designed as very much in the retro category, which is to say that back in the late 90s and early to mid to late 2000s, the design format was around the retro styling reminiscent of motorcycles from the 60s and 70s. So I'll just take you through the bits and bats that I've added to this machine over the last sort of 18 months by and large, and just give you an idea of what you can do. So one of the first things that I added to this bike were these additional chrome spotlights. Now the XJR1300, being a retro motorcycle, obviously is fitted with the single round headlamp at the front, but I'm a little bit obsessed about seeing and being seen. So I wanted something that was in keeping of the overall thematic design of the motorcycle. So I managed to source online these really good quality chrome spot lamps, and the brackets, believe it or not, are just 5mm thick stainless steel shelf brackets, which with a bit of finagling and a bit of disguising work perfectly well and hold these spotlights absolutely rigidly to the motorcycle, actually using the original headlight retaining bolts. So the overall impression is one of chrome, matching the chrome trim around the headlight and matching the chrome casings for the instrument bezels. So I think that's a both a very functional addition to the motorcycle in terms of visibility, but also an aesthetic enhancement that really sets off the retro chrome appeal of the design. And so the next addition to the Yamaha XJR1300 is this chrome tail rack. Originally the bike was fitted with a black grab rail, and so by way of an aesthetic enhancement and something that's very functional in terms of being able to attach things like monokey plates for baggage systems, this again is an item which both improves the appearance of the bike and also gives you some additional luggage carrying capacity. So that's the chrome tail rack. And next up, again continuing the black and red theme, are these red anodised clutch and brake levers. Not a particularly expensive item. I think these came in at around £60 off the internet, probably about half an hour to fit both of them. The clutch was a little bit of a faff, to be honest with you. In fact, the first time I did it, I took the bike out and the clutch started slipping every time I gave it the beans, and so came back, basically disassembled it, and I just not lined up the clutch master cylinder plunger correctly with the recess in the barrel that sits inside that clutch lever assembly there. But again, adds a bit of functionality because these have more adjustments than the original levers. but mainly an aesthetic upgrade in terms of the colour to match the overall theme of this bike, which is black, chrome and red. Now this next edition is a new leather seat cover. I had this made and particularly chose this cover, which is described as Bordeaux. And this really is a nod back to the late 60s and early 70s when, as a kid, as I was walking to school, I was transfixed by all the cars that were parked up and down outside a company called English Electric. And all the managers' cars, they seemed to be big black cars like Sunbeam Rapiers and Rover P6s, things of that nature. And there were black cars and they all had red leather upholstery and chrome trim, and I thought they looked absolutely fantastic. So this is a little bit of a homage, a little bit of a nod back to my past when I was obsessed with all things on four wheels rather than two. And of course every pristine bike should have a tank protector to prevent scuffing from your clothing on the tank, and this black paintwork loves to get marked very, very quickly. But rather than fix the ubiquitous carbon fibre simulated tank protector, I managed to source this thematic tank protector made for this motorcycle with the XJ logo there, as you can see. It's available in a few colours, black and grey, black and blue, and this black and red again to match in with the overall colour scheme. So I think you'll agree that as far as tank protectors goes, that's a pretty pleasing effect. So coming down to the bottom end of the bike now, I fitted this black colour-coded belly pan. Now there are two schools of thought here as to whether this is purely cosmetic or as to whether or not it has a functional element to it. I suppose to some extent it does prevent a lot of dirt and debris flying up onto the exhausts. I mean, I keep these downpipes absolutely as immaculate as I can keep them, using Autosol on an elbow grease on a regular basis. But this belly pan, which was bought from a company called Power Bronze, who have a shop on eBay, relatively straightforward to fit. Certainly more straightforward than I first anticipated it to be, albeit that I've had to swap around the engine bars to accommodate the fittings of the belly pan. So now those chrome engine bars that I mentioned, these, as well as being an aesthetic cosmetic addition, certainly have some important functionality about them. Now they are meant to be mounted the other way around. They are actually upside down, but when mounted in the original way, they fouled all the fittings of the belly pan. So after a lot of trial and error, I did find that by just upending the engine bars that belly pan would just about fit, and of course the bars still do exactly the same job. As you can see, they're bolted onto the engine mount. So that's the chrome engine bars for the Yamaha XJR1300. Now here's another purely cosmetic addition, polished stainless steel, laser etched cylinder head trims with the logo etched in there. These are not a particularly expensive item, £20–25 or so. They actually sit underneath the cylinder head bolts there. Just a caveat, when I first put this side on, fired up the bike, oil started to leak from this cylinder head bolt here, and it transpired that I'd not tightened the bolts up sufficiently. So then when I tried to tighten them up a bit further, these lugs started to warp because I hadn't actually tightened these bolts up sequentially, one and then the other. So there was an uneven distribution of of force which caused the lugs to warp. So I had to buy another set because they only come as a pair, and this time I was very careful about how I tightened those bolts up, and since then everything's been absolutely fine. So that's the cylinder head polished stainless steel logo trim. And right down at the bottom here we have the polished stainless steel swinging arm inserts, one either side, again with the XJR1300 logo laser cut into the metal. And these again are purely cosmetic, just continuing the chrome theme. They are actually secured using silicone, which is about the only adhesive that you can reliably use for this application, really. And it's a question of applying the adhesive over a number of the strategic points on the plates, and then clamping them in place and leaving them for at least 24 hours. But the overall effect, I think, is quite pleasing. And here we have more chrome inserts, again siliconed onto the plastic panel that sits beneath the original logo there. These again are a purely cosmetic addition to the motorcycle, but they just help set off the rest of the chrome work and metal work around that particular area on the frame. And here at the front end we have a polished stainless steel cover or guard for the oil cooler, and I think in equal measure this is both cosmetic and functional. I mean, it really sets the front end of the bike off, particularly with that logo laser cut into the metal layer, but it also offers additional protection to a particularly vulnerable but very important part of the engine, which is the oil cooler there. So that's a really good quality item made by a company called Beowulf. So that's the oil cooler polished stainless steel guard from Beowulf. So let's kill two birds with one stone with this one. I found out when I took this motorcycle out for a ride in cold weather that my hands got very quickly very cold indeed. It originally didn't have heated grips or any additional hand protection. So these are Oxford heated grips, which cost me absolutely nothing because they came free with the subscription to Motorcycle News. So a great piece of kit for free there, for a publication that I was buying regularly anyway, so it made eminent common sense. 3 different kinds available on that offer, but this is the retro option, and the pattern sort of mimics the grips that used to feature in motorcycles in the 60s and 70s. They get really hot. There's a number of settings on there. Really excellent addition to the bike, both stylish and very functional indeed. Together with that are these black handguards, and these came off the KTM 1290 Super Adventure, and if you have a look at that video you will see that I replaced these original handguards on the KTM with the orange handguards. And when I took these off, I was very pleasantly surprised to see that they fit on the Yamaha with no problem whatsoever. So that completes just an overview of the additions that I've made to this beautiful Yamaha XJR1300 motorcycle. It really is a classic bike in my opinion, and as a retro inspired machine I think it's as good looking as any bike that came out of the stables of the noughties as any other. There are one or two other things that I've added which are not really significant, but just add to the overall impression of the machine, which is just a beautiful big black, chrome and red naked motorcycle, and she's an absolute pleasure to own and to ride. Love this bike to bits.